I have almost reached the end of my main growing season for this year. And if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that even though we're only sort of heading towards halfway through the calendar year here in the Southern Hemisphere, this is the beginning of my wind down to my end of year, which is about June. Now is when the growing work starts to wrap up and the reset begins. Now, I've done videos about how I use my chicken flock to help me with the end of season garden work, and I'll link those if you want the full detailed walkthrough. But today I want to talk about why I do this and not just how, because understanding the why is what turns this from a nice thing to watch into something that can actually change the way you think about your garden and your flock working together. So when I take the nets off a garden bed at the end of the season and let the chickens in, it looks like chaos. It looks like the chickens having a lovely time scratching around and eating things and making a mess. And they are. But there's a lot more going on than what it looks like on the surface. When your growing season ends, your garden beds are full of things that are going to cause you problems next season if you leave them there. You've got pest larvae that are getting ready to overwinter in the soil. Slugs have laid eggs in the mulch and under debris. Weed seeds have dropped from plants that bolted and went to seed. And all of this is just sitting there, waiting for spring to come around so it can make your life difficult. Now, you could go out and dig everything over yourself. You could spray things. You could do all sorts of work to try and deal with these problems. Or you could let your chickens do it, because this is what they love to do. They scratch, they dig, they turn soil over, and they eat every little seed and larvae and grub and slug egg they can find. They are incredibly thorough. And while they're doing all of that work, they're also fertilizing the soil for you at the same time. So you're getting pest control, weed control, soil cultivation, and fertilization all happening at once from animals that are enjoying themselves doing it. That's the bit that I think gets missed when people talk about chickens in the garden. It's not just, oh, the chickens eat bugs. It's that they are actively breaking pest and weed cycles for you. Every slug egg a chicken eats is one less slug you're going to be fighting next season. Every weed seed that gets gobbled up is one less weed you're going to be pulling. And that compounds year after year. So my system has been pretty simple. The growing season ends and I clear the garden beds one at a time. I take the net off, let the chickens in, they strip back the old vegetation. I come back in a day or two or 3 or a week and pull out anything they couldn't get. Then I add compost from my composting chicken run on top. The chickens spread that for me, scratch it all in, eat any seeds or grubs in it, and add their own fertilizer while they're at it. Then I close the bed off, cover it back up, and I wait a few weeks for seeds to germinate. When I see a nice flush of little seedlings coming up, I let the chickens back in and they knock it all down. Close it up again, wait for the next flush, chickens go back in. And I just keep doing that rotation through the off season until spring comes around and I'm ready to plant. Or I forget to put the cover back, decide to just leave the cover off, and the chickens keep the bed pretty well clean of weeds until it's time to plant in the springtime. But what I really want to talk about is what happens when you do this year after year. Because I've been running this system for a few years now, and the difference is it's quite something. When I first started gardening here, I was pretty lucky as my soil was structurally pretty good. A good place to start from anyway, not too sandy, not just clay, but it wasn't amazing. It had nutrient deficiencies, it was compacted in places, rain wouldn't infiltrate really well, it dried out quickly. It didn't have a lot of life in it. And every spring I was fighting weeds and pests, and it felt like I was starting from scratch every single season. Now I can pick up a handful of soil from these beds and it's dark and it's crumbly and it smells like earth should smell. It holds moisture so much better than it used to, and it is absolutely full of worms. I find worms everywhere in the garden beds, which if you think about it makes complete sense because I've been feeding the soil with chicken run compost and chicken manure and all sorts of organic matter for years, and the worm population has just exploded. And the surrounding land where the lawn grows and all the places that aren't garden beds, they have improved massively as well from the chickens being on the ground, pooping and scratching. The weed pressure in spring is much lower than it used to be. I still get weeds, of course I do, but it's nothing like what it was. And I'm not doing anything clever to achieve that. I'm just letting the chickens cycle through and do what chickens do. And over time, the weed seed bank in the soil has been drawn down. Each year, there are fewer seeds waiting to germinate because the chickens have been eating them and the cover crops have been out-competing them. And that's just the stuff you can see. What's happening underneath is where it gets really fascinating, at least for me. I'm a bit of a soil nerd. So when chickens scratch through a garden bed, they're aerating the soil, they're opening it up, they're creating space for air and water to move through. That's important because soil microbes need oxygen and moisture to do their work, just like plants need oxygen and moisture. And those microbes are doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to making nutrients available to your plants. Then you've got the chicken manure going in and the compost from my chicken run, and that is feeding those microbial communities. It's giving them something to work with. And over time, as that microbial life builds up, your soil starts to function like a living system rather than just dirt that you put plants in. And then when I close off the beds between chicken rotations, that's doing something important too. That cover of the plants growing back, it's protecting the soil surface. It's keeping moisture in. It's shielding the fungal networks from drying out in the sun. Fungi are a really important part of healthy soil, and they don't love being exposed to UV light and wind. So that cycle of opening a bed up for the chickens and then closing it back down again, it's kind of mimicking a natural disturbance and recovery pattern. The chickens come through like a herd of tiny livestock. They do their work, and then the soil gets time to recover and rebuild before the next pass. And every single cycle builds on the one before. The soil gets a little bit better each time, a little bit more life, a little bit more structure, a little bit more capacity to grow healthy plants. It's not dramatic in any one season, but over years, you can really see it and feel it. And that's sort of the point of farming this way. You're not trying to force a result in one season. You're building something. Each year, the system gets a little bit stronger, a little bit more resilient. The chickens are driving that process, and all you're really doing is giving them access and getting out of the way. If you've been following the channel for a while, you might remember that I co-own a milking cow. Her name is Molly. And when I think about where we are now, my chickens drove the fertility that built this soil over the last few years. That soil grows food for my family and forage that I can cut and take to Molly. And Molly produces milk for us. It all connects, each part feeding the next. And it started with chickens scratching around in garden beds. That's what an integrated system looks like in practice. Not some grand design, just small things connecting up over time. Now, I do want to mention something new I'm trying this year, because every season I'm looking at the system and thinking about what could work a little bit better. In previous years, I've relied on whatever seeds are already in the soil to germinate between chicken rotations. Volunteers from plants that went to seed, whatever comes up. And that works. But this year, I'm going to deliberately sow cover crops into the beds after each chicken pass. Things like fenugreek, mustard, clover, radish, fodder beet, and some of the flock's whole grain feed mix, oats, wheat, peas, beans, things that will germinate and grow into good quality grazing, but that are also doing specific jobs in the soil while they grow. Mustard and radish break up compaction, clover and fenugreek fixing nitrogen, oats and wheat holding everything together. I'm planning a 7-week rotation across my 7 beds. 1 bed opens per week. Before the chickens go in, I'll cut the tall growth and take it to Molly. Then the chickens graze what's left, fertilize the bed, and I close it back up, throw down a few more seeds, and move on to the next. I'm still figuring out the details, and I'll share how it goes. If you want to follow along more closely with the experiment, I share in-depth updates in my newsletter, which you can sign up for in the description below. So if you're coming to the end of your growing season, or if you're just starting to think about the start of the next one, consider how your chickens can be part of this work. You don't need 7 garden beds or a fancy rotation. Even 1 or 2 beds with the chickens cycling through the off-season will make a real difference to what you're dealing with come spring. Let the chickens do what they're good at. You might be surprised at how much less work you end up doing yourself and how much better your soil gets over time.